What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to this week's edition of NKU Sports Break. I'm your host, Trey Bowden. Joining me on the show today is NKU's Associate Athletic Director, Debbie Kirch. Thanks for coming on the show, Debbie.
Thanks for having me, Trey.
So, Debbie, you've been the Associate Athletic Director at NKU since 2017 and have done just a phenomenal job since. Can you share with our audience what exactly your job entails and how you've been so successful?
Well, I think the fun part about my job is that I get to work with so many different areas between NCAA compliance, our academic area, student athlete development, our SAC group. Every day is different, and so that's a lot of fun for me. And I still get to work with the student athletes directly, which is that's why we do what we do. So I think one of the reasons we've been so successful in all these areas between our graduation rates and our academic performance is really a credit to our coaches and to the type of student athletes they bring in to their programs. And then huge credit to our student athletes for all their hard work. They are committed to being the best that they can be on the field of play, in the classroom. I can't say enough about our student athletes, but also I have got a great staff between Michael Gray and now we have two relatively new advisors, Nia Robinson and Alyssa Matthews. But year in and year out, our advisors have been committed to the success of our student athletes and really care about them. So it's just a lot of, they always say it takes a village. It's just a lot of people contributing to that success.
Absolutely. And I know the pandemic sure did throw everyone a curveball. And when the pandemic first started, how was the transition in the spring to remote learning? And can you also talk a little bit about the academic support in the fall?
Yeah, it was crazy. And I'm sure you know that as a student athlete. It was really, I just remember coming back the day after the Horizon League basketball tournament, and I was in a meeting with all the academic advisors on campus, and we were talking about different options, different scenarios. What happens if we were working on campus, but then the students are off campus, and all these different scenarios. And then I left the meeting and an email went out saying we were closing the campus and we were going remote. And so, there really just wasn't a lot of time to transition. It was nice to have that added week to spring break to give us time to meet as a staff and talk about, where do we go from here? How do we do this? And I think in the spring, it was all about making sure our student athletes were transitioning and knew what they needed to do. There were a lot of conversations with our advisors and our student athletes trying to search for email information from professors because they were switching from a class that was in person to remote. So doing a lot of searches in inboxes, trying to help our student athletes not have technology fatigue because of all the Zoom class sessions that they were doing and all the emails that they were getting. And so it was really about helping our student athletes through that time period and doing something completely new that they weren't ready for, and understanding that the professors weren't, this faculty wasn't ready for it either. As far as the fall is concerned, we just feel like we're much more prepared for it. We kind of, tried some things in the spring, some things worked, some things didn't, and just implementing things from the beginning of the semester has really helped. And so you can just tell there's a difference, that our students are more ready for it.
Now, from a compliance standpoint, how have you been able to navigate through all the NCAA changes all spring and now into the fall?
Well, between myself and Michael Gray, our assistant director, it's constantly reading emails that are coming out. The hardest thing is these changes are coming from different committees and different groups within the NCAA. So it's not coming in one email, it's coming from multiple emails. And it's really easy to miss things. So between the two of us, just, really making sure that we're reading everything that's coming out, all the changes carefully, and being as transparent and as informative as we can be between our coaches and our staff, and then our student athletes. We started a weekly email with our student athletes in the spring, and we're going to start that back up again this fall, just making sure that they know all the things that are coming. But it's weekly, just clarifications or new things that are coming out. And I think it's just that communication piece and explaining it to everybody that's involved in our department.
Now, I know you play a huge part in SAC. Do you mind explaining what exactly SAC is and how SAC has engaged with the student athletes, even though, we've been apart for so long?
Yeah, our SAC is our Student Athlete Advisory Committee, and we look for leaders on each of the teams to represent their sport programs in basically a leadership committee, a leadership group. And we try to meet, either every other week, every third week, to discuss the things that are impacting our student athletes on our campus, but also nationwide. So like last week when we met, we talked about social injustice and voter registration and how important this election is going to be. And so we talked about how we could engage our student athletes in the election day and in voter registration. And then those reps go back to their sport programs and discuss the things that we discuss at the SAC level to their sport programs and engage their team in the things that we talk about at that level. And so it really is, we talk to them about just the varying directions of communication, because we have some of our SAC members are on the Horizon League SAC, and so they bring things from the league to our SAC, or brings things that are happening on our campus to the league SAC. And then we have a national SAC rep, Ava Lawson, who meets with the national SAC group. And so there's just a lot of transferring of information. And again, it's about the communication and making sure that we're keeping everybody informed with everything that's going on, but also listen to our student athletes. I mean, we can make a meeting agendas that make sense to us, but if they don't make sense to our student athletes, if we're not addressing the things our student athletes are talking about, then we're failing as a department. And so it's really about that student athlete voice. We need to listen to it and make changes based on it.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you, Debbie, for joining me on the show today and giving us a behind the scenes look of what you and what NKU has been going through, during this pandemic. That does it for this week's edition of NKU Sports Break. I'm your host, Trey Bowden.